Sounds
no
good.
big deal. Everything is relaxed, easy, no problem. Yeah, I was also told in the I should sit up and not slouch, and I look fat, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
how
the
much
camera
crap you
adds.
get.
How many pounds do they say?
10 at least.
10?
Yeah.
10 at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, we went out for burgers last night. Should have really took that into consideration before doing this.
Actually, I'm surprised you didn't go to Burger King for our special.
Ooh,
So we get 2 for $5,
the tradition.
and you take half the bread out and make it a double beef Whopper with extra everything. So all the ingredients, like the sauce and the, what do you call it, lettuce and all that other stuff, you get double of it. That is my secret. I shared it with Corey, and now hopefully.
I worked for Burger King.
Yeah, I know. So he's a Burger King expert.
You know who else worked at Burger King? Chamath Palihapitiya. Yeah, one of the biggest. I don't know, probably my favorite investor in the startup space,
Really?
and also the king of SPACs. He's basically responsible for every company that SPAC took Virgin Galactic public, and that's really what started this whole SPAC trend. But I think most people don't know that before he did all of these incredible things, he worked at Burger King first as just the guy who was just cleaning the toilets. And then he ended up being, ended up being the cashier there. And he comes from a really, really poor family, just really poor background. Incredible story. But basically, he's making like $4 an hour, or $4, whatever the minimum wage was at the time. And so he started skimming Burger King as his first job, and that's how he got by. And that's his family was his dad was chronically unemployed, and anyway. But yeah, it seems Burger King people who worked at Burger King have these like really great outcomes, right? Sandy,
actually, a lot of people who are poor.
Corey's president now. I mean,
so here's the deal:
humble beginnings.
He did not have a wealthy family, and my family was dead poor. I found that the luxury of adversity can happen when you don't start out with a silver spoon in your mouth. Now, not to say that the very rich don't work as hard and whatnot, because I've seen lots of rich people that work their asses off every day. But if you look at people who become innovators, it's because at a very young age they had to try and eke out a living. And for instance, I do these things every once in a while, workshops and whatnot, where I talk to people about how to innovate, and I give them little different little things. So one of them that I do is I give them a piece of newspaper. Everybody gets a piece of newspaper. And I say, I want 100 ideas in 60 seconds that you can come up with using a piece of newspaper. Go. That's it. And they start writing and stuff like that. And usually what you'll get is about people come up with 5 or 10 ideas, maybe. Then I put them into a team. And now they'll come up with about like 40. Usually what they do is they combine what they've got and then they stop. And then I bring out this, I used to have the video. I'm not sure whether it's still around anymore. I put the video on. And I have a kid from Detroit, and he did 115 or 150, I don't remember, a huge number in 60 seconds, and things that you'd never think of. Oh, you can use newspaper inside your shoe. I mean, only somebody who's really poor is going to think of something like that. And if you got onto a desert island, that's the kid I want with me. I want that kid, because he's going to figure out how to make the most out of whatever's laying around. That inspiration kind of stuff is what I like the best. I really like to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you also learn how to be really scrappy, right?
Yes.
That's hugely important. You have all these billionaires with like some great ideas start these companies, startups, and they think they'll like just really be able to pull off the next multi-billion, trillion-dollar company. And it's like, go build these amazing things, and here's one idea, and you sort of figure out the rest, but here's a grand vision. And, if money's no object, then you end up being just spending a lot of money on a lot of things, and you just never get it done. But yeah, this guy, Chamath, started from these extremely humble beginnings, and he was a refugee, moved to Canada as a 10, 11-year-old, and then couldn't basically afford anything. And when they moved there, like, they were given like old mattresses to sleep on for him and his sister and his dad and his mom. And that was like a huge welcoming for them. And anyway, so he learned how to be really scrappy and just really hustle, and made it all the way to now. And then he became a vice president at Facebook when he was, I think, like 27, 28, sometime really early. And then all the way till now to the SPAC thing that he's done. And so just great beginnings. And then I guess Elon is another story that everybody knows. Just fantastic, humble beginnings, just traveling on $500 across the country from South Africa to Canada to the East Coast, and then all the way to San Francisco, I think. It was where he landed, Palo Alto maybe specifically. And him and his brother found an abandoned office and just moved in, no shower, no anything. I'm like, how much scrappier can you get than just living with, just basically taking over a space and then spending like $1 or $2 on food every day. Anyway, I love these stories. You ever go into the Sandy story?
Do I ever do Sandy stories?
No. Have you ever gone into your Sandy story of the humble beginnings and basically how you chose the unbeaten path?
I don't remember doing that, but at the end of the day, I don't want to go all the way back to zero, but I started working at about 9, picking apples and walnuts and all kinds of stuff that was in our neighborhood. The big thing, though, that most people I don't talk too much about is when that was a bad year for me. The year I started the company, I left a Ford Motor Company. I went through a divorce, or a separation, and on my birthday, I was sitting in a parking lot across from General Motors, and it's cold out, and I was trying to make a decision between eating or putting gas in the car, because I'm living in a car, and that was the lowest point, I guess, in my career after starting the company. The good news is that I made a decision after my son saying me happy birthday. The only thing I had was my bag phone. That was the only communication thing I had, and that was kind of extraordinary. I mean, in those days, that was big stuff. It wasn't like everybody had cell phones. You have a bag phone 32, 33 years ago. That was a big deal. And so anyway, I got a phone call, and I see it's my son, and he's saying me happy birthday, and he says, "I hope you have a good birthday, Dad." And I'm going, "Yeah, I'm sure I will, now that I've talked to you, blah, blah, blah." It was a lousy birthday. And so what I did was I decided I was going to blow it. And I went and bought gas. And I went to Country Buffet, I think it's called. Anyway, I went there. I ate as much as I possibly could. And I vowed that tomorrow I am going to go into General Motors and ask, where's my money? And so I went there because they owed me a lot. And they owed me for quite a while. So I went in and I went and talked to the purchasing agent, and she said, "Look, I've sent that off a long time ago. Let's go." And so we went to the accounts receivable or whatever, the people who pay anyway. And there was 2 lady vice presidents. So anyways, I went and sat down in this little waiting room or whatever. And sometimes when you hear your name, if you hear your name, you recognize it. Even if you're in a crowded room, you hear your name and you're looking around, who just called me, right? Same thing is true if you see your logo after a while. And I'm looking down on the floor, and I look up at the receptionist's desk, and I see our logo on a piece of paper underneath one of the legs of her desk. And I went, that's my invoice. And I went over, and this woman, she went crazy. She ran out into where the other two ladies were arguing in the real office. And I leaned on, I walked over, I lifted the desk up with my back, I pulled my invoice out, and I started unfolding it. Now, I know that everybody was screaming and yelling, but when you're in this kind of a mode, your vision shrinks and you can't hear and stuff like that. And I unfolded my invoice, and there's all the signatures except for one. Ooh.
Whoa.
And I picked it up, and the women they stopped screaming and yelling. I do remember that. And I said, here's my invoice. It was underneath this desk as a leveler. This is, I'm living in my truck, and they got pulled out of my hand, and I'm terribly sorry. You can go now. Anyway, I got a check that day. Then I had to go and find a bank account because I didn't have a bank account. So cashing the check turned into a bit of an issue too. So it was kind of that's kind of like how the company really got started.
And do you still operate? Is this why lean design just focuses on cost cutting, just this value engineering?
Well, yeah. Well, that's part of it, I guess. But at the end of the day, we had already helped out. We helped save one car, the F car, the Camaro Firebird, and we were working on a couple of others. So what we need to do though is really look forward. And let's take a pause right now because we started in the middle and we need to start at the beginning. So, hello everyone, welcome to Munro Live. Today we have Zen Matoshi. He is pretty much the reason that we took the trip to California, actually across the United States. He was the one who got us going. Zen's not your average kind of guy, and we thought that this would be a great time for people to find out about somebody who's got a lot of ideas and actually not afraid to get them going. So with that, Zen, I'm going to pass it on to you and welcome you to Munro Live.
Sandy, thank you for having me. The trip started and it was incredible, and you had a chance to visit me in California and Faraday and see everything that we're doing there. That was great. Just I don't know anybody who can basically drop everything and just do a cross country trip. And
well, we didn't drop anything. We just dropped it on everybody else.
Well, you dropped it on everybody else? True, yeah. But then also, did you tell the story about how you got the guys were tearing up the car and it was like, hey, put it back together. we're doing a cross country trip. We're going to California.
Yeah. Well, the way we work it here, and this is a big secret, is Corey will go out and tell everybody what to do. And what he says is, well, hey, it's not me, it's Sandy. And then we're both, we share the responsibilities and the blame. What are those idiots doing now? That's kind of like probably what went on outside. But anyways, what I was hoping for was if you could give us a little background on how you got to where you got to at such a young age. Yeah. And maybe Hyperloop and some of the other, like Faraday and things. That would be great if we could hear from you.
Sure. I started working in finance. So I went to college, got my degrees in finance, and basically loved it until I started working in finance. And I did some PWM, some private wealth management stuff. And quickly found out within maybe a year that this is definitely not what I want to do. But we were sold that this was the greatest thing on the planet. You guys want to do investment banking, you want to do in finance, and you want to be like trading all of this money, all these billions of dollars. And we did. And what ended up happening was we would be managing wealth for CEOs, executives, these startup founders, these incredible people. And at first I thought, that was very interesting. But then when I was really looking at what they were doing, I was like, well, that should be me out there. I want to do that. That's amazing. And I can spend my entire life here managing people's money and just basically miss out on all the action. So I had, this was my first year on the job. So I left banking and started.
Well, when would this be? How many years ago?
This was just over a decade ago. Mm-hmm. I had made some money in banking, so and I had learned a thing or two about startups and how companies were run by the people whose money we were managing. And I started investing in some startups at the time as well, like just angel investing, very small amounts of money. I think my first investment was about $30,000, which was like, a lot of the money that I had, maybe like most of the money that I had at the time. And so I made that initial investment. The company went under within a few months of that investment. I was like, okay, that is not how you do that. Okay, start over. And then about 4 years into working with startups and investing in startups, as well as building some of my own platforms, Hyperloop was founded in California. And one of the guys who had founded Hyperloop, him and I knew each other. And then another co-founder came on board, this guy, this Italian entrepreneur named Bebop Gresta. And so this was like, I think, early 2014 or so. And the company was just getting off the ground. Elon Musk had popularized Hyperloop. He had written the white paper with his team at SpaceX. And I had gotten in touch with a team at SpaceX who had written the white paper and gotten to know these engineers. And they were incredible people. And so I basically joined up with these two entrepreneurs in California, flew over, met them. And back then, Hyperloop was nothing more than a couple of $100,000 that we raised. And the white paper that was written by SpaceX and Elon, Elon's first idea was for the Hyperloop was a little bit different, so I won't get into it, but we managed to get just a little bit of funding, rented a $1,300 a month hangar from this guy in Culver City. It's basically, just abandoned hangars. Pretty incredible. And it was just a few of us. It was just the three of us or four of us at the time. And that's how we got started with Hyperloop. I thought it was very intriguing. It would be a project that could make a real difference in people's lives, offer really a very efficient mode of transportation that doesn't require a lot of energy, that transports people from A to B very quickly and very cheaply. And eventually the team grew very quickly, and the rest is history. Hyperloop has come really far along from them to now. And then since I had been working with Hyperloop and other startups, I just kept that trend going and doing angel investing in startups as well as advising startups. And that's what I've been doing over the past decade or so. And then eventually got into EVs, sustainable transportation. Hyperloop will take a little bit longer, but in the meantime, and that's a different use anyway. But in the meantime, we really need EVs, not only for sustainable transportation, but also I think EVs in the near future can really bring down the cost of vehicle ownership to levels that we hadn't seen before. They can do some really incredible things, and of course Tesla really set that out very well. And you, of course, as well. You had something to do with the EV industry, working on the EV1 way back when.
Yeah, but unfortunately. That was a great project. We hit every target except for one. We didn't get range. And we could have got that if we would have gone away from the lead acid batteries and went to, at that time, nickel metal hydrate. So that would have been great. But when you get into a big company, innovation is usually crushed in favor of other things, promotions and bureaucracy and what have you, and that became quite a political hot potato. It's funny when you're talking about Hyperloop, it made me think of something. I don't know if you're aware of it, but Ford invented a product when I was either in grade school or high school. It's called the Ford Levacar, and it's exactly the same as the Hyperloop. That's what they wanted to do, but it was classified as just too spacey for words. We'll have to crush that, and they unfortunately did. And I think they put out the Edsel instead. So
great alternative.
Yeah, great alternative. So, but you're also working with Faraday, which I'm kind of interested in. Faraday Future. I went down and had a look at the plant. As basically you gave me a tour and whatnot, or arranged the tour, I think it'd be great if people heard about that, because I was very impressed with the speed, with the comfort. A lot of things about Faraday made me maybe a little on the excited side. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Faraday's great. It's got a very interesting past for sure, but it's actually a great technology, and so many talented people have worked at Faraday through the years. How I got involved with Faraday is I was in California working on some Hyperloop projects, and one of the people from Faraday asked me to go and meet them. Hey, we're a new EV company. This is what we're starting out. I didn't end up joining Faraday at the time, but I did end up working with the executives at Faraday who were there then, and others that came along the way, came and went. And so I just started advising some of the executives who were at the company, and eventually I ended up joining Faraday full-time as the global head of innovation, and I've been doing that since. But yeah, Faraday is a very interesting company. You saw some of the technology yourself. Yeah. The whole premise for Faraday was come up with something new, something fresh. So not only build EVs, but build these entire ecosystems around the ownership of these EVs. Plan was to build this digital ecosystem where you have essentially a smart car. It has your ADAS features. It has your level 2 plus level 3 autonomous driving, and you want to create this seamless experience for your customers where when they get in any Faraday vehicle, they basically end up having the same user experience because you build an intelligent operating system. It's a little bit unlike what Tesla has been doing. Faraday's operating system, infotainment system is Android Auto based, but it's sort of like a customized version. So if you get into one Faraday vehicle, but that vehicle is in service somewhere, or you're using your friend's vehicle, or it's in the near future where you have ride sharing and autonomous vehicles, your experience, your apps, your services come with you wherever you go. So it doesn't really matter what vehicle you get into, your information, your data, your experience will be the same. So say you were watching Netflix at home or in a vehicle that you were in as a passenger, maybe it was a ride-sharing vehicle, and you get to the next one, you can pick up where you left off on your Netflix episode or of whatever, for example. And also then we have cameras in the vehicle for each seat. So if you want to, when you get in, you can have facial recognition and you can authenticate that way, even if you're in the vehicle and you switch seats. So we have displays for each user. So your driver has the CID, and then your passenger has the passenger display, and then one in the rear as well. We have a 27-inch screen in the back, and as you move from one seat to the other, your account basically comes with you, not only from vehicle to vehicle, but even from seat to seat. And basically our car recognizes where you're sitting based on a couple of different things, cameras and your phone and your location.
And that's one of the things that I liked about the car is obviously not for the average person. This is going to be some kind of a limousine type of a product. By the way, I really like the opera doors. And I think that as time goes by, this type of a vehicle is going to be the type of thing that either an executive will want to buy for the company and have him drive around like you'd have a private jet or something. Or if we look at a limo kind of an application, there's a lot of benefits that I can see that would be from that, if you like, the high-end market.
It does give you the private jet experience, doesn't it? With the way the seats recline and the way it sounds and how spacious it is. But it while it seems like it would be a very, very expensive car, private jet experience, I'm thinking maybe $300,000-$400,000, Rolls Royce, Bentley. Yeah. It's actually not that expensive. So it's more in line with some of the higher trims of, the the Maybach or the Bentayga, or if you're getting the Plaid model of the Tesla Model X, you're looking at like similar price points. You're not looking at a $400,000 price point. It certainly might feel that way, and you experience it that way.
So let's just jump into maybe what you think of the future of the auto industry. Where do you think we're going, and how fast do you think we'll get there?
Ooh, future of automotive industry. While everybody's is racing for specs, and specs are great, it basically sets brands apart. We have the quickest EV, we have the longest range EV. That's great. But I think that in the near future, maybe maximum 5 years, we're going to go towards more of a ride-sharing model where if you're ride-sharing, your range doesn't matter as much, especially if you're transporting people within cities. And your 0 to 60 doesn't matter as much, because if you have an autonomous vehicle, it's not really going to do any 0 to 60 times.
Probably not.
Probably not. Just go through traffic, weave in and out. So the focus, I think, should be, how do we make autonomous vehicles that are comfortable, get people from point A to point B, and do it safely, provide a great user experience, and lower the cost from where it is today to, lower it by 80-90% in order of magnitude. And I think that can be done with EVs and autonomous vehicles. And so what are the differentiators then? What kind of experience do you offer? Everybody's headed towards, we have the biggest screen in the car. We have, we have the brightest screen, the highest resolution, and we can play YouTube videos. But I think you can also go beyond that. You can go beyond giant screens in vehicles. And so that will be very, very important. By 2025, we expect, and all the research that I've looked at indicates this, that the autonomous ride-sharing market by 25 will be about a $3 to $4 trillion market. And by the end of the decade, closer to $8-9 trillion. And so do you really want to be selling vehicles over the next few years if you're an OEM? Or do you want to have your own ride-sharing services? If you're Tesla, let's take Tesla for an example. If the value of Autopilot is $250,000, as Elon has put it a few times, do you still want to sell that vehicle and try to charge $10,000 for autonomous driving capabilities and basically have that car sit there? Or do you instead want to have your own ride-sharing service with today's prices, with what Uber and Lyft charge today? If you kept those prices and operated a vehicle, say 10 hours a day, you're basically making like $200,000 a year per vehicle. You can basically get the money back that you invested into building that vehicle within the first quarter of a year.
Yeah.
And so I think that the business model just changes completely and dramatically. And then when this market is saturated, maybe you go back to selling vehicles again and charging for $10,000 or whatever it is going to be for autonomous driving capabilities.
Well, I know that last year Uber lost about $6 billion, and I know that 30 or 35 or almost 40% of their drivers went bust and didn't do it anymore. And the reason for that is because they can't charge enough to get people really excited about getting into their vehicles right now. So for me, autonomous driving is the holy grail, if you like, for these guys. I agree that trillions of dollars worth of transactions are going to be happening shortly, but it's going to happen without some of the cost. And the cost that right now, for the drivers on Uber and whatnot, because they're not electric, because you've got maintenance, you've got oil changes, you've got engines blow up periodically, on and on and on. Because of those things and the price of gasoline, there's just it's not working for them. It did for a while, now it's not. So with electrification, for me, I believe that that's going to be the enabler, especially if you can get ADAS or an autonomous system go along with it. I think that that's going to be the big enabler for the rideshare.
Yeah, you basically, I see two sets of people who are like the minority who think that this can be done in the next few years. And then I think most people think that this is still like, I don't know, 20 years out or something. It's not, it's here. You experienced Tesla's beta autopilot version, right?
Right.
How was that experience for you? Did it seem like it's going to be, we're 20 years away or 10 years away?
No, they're there right now. And I'm not sure whether I was in a 4.5 or a 5, level 5 vehicle. Level 5 means I can put it in the desert and get me to where I need to go without a road. But I will tell you, I've been in lots of vehicles with lots of different systems, and I haven't experienced anything like that before, ever. Zero. Never. I mean, really and truly, there will be Luddites. There will be people who will protest and vigorously protest that it won't happen that way. But these are people who, there's always people like that. You know, they want to go back to the good old days. Maybe they want to have horses and buggies and stuff like that. In fact, when Henry Ford was trying to put his car out, the first Henry Ford, what was the standard thing whenever somebody drove by? Go get a horse or something. That there's going to always be people like that. But I think that en masse, there's going to be a huge change, and it's going to happen very, very, very quickly. And those people that aren't prepared are going to be in really bad shape.
Yeah, it all comes back to innovation and how quickly you can change people's minds with something that's just so much better than anything that exists.
Yeah.
You have this paradigm shift. Speaking of the Henry Ford days and the horses, right? It's like back in those days, if you ask people, well, how do you want your transportation to improve? The answers would be something like, well, horse eats a lot. Need him to eat less. Need him to be stronger, carry more weight.
A horse that runs faster. Henry Ford he said he asked the customers, and they said, can you give me a horse that runs faster?
Yeah, I need a horse that runs much faster.
Yeah.
Does all these things better. It's like, who would ever thought, well, no, we can have like cars.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are today as well. We have this chance to to have that complete paradigm shift.
Obviously, the future is going to have to change, and probably one of the biggest sticking points is probably going to be the future of batteries. So where do you stand on that?
So today we have amazing propulsion systems, and it's not just Tesla, it's not just Faraday. Audi and Porsche have some amazing specs with their propulsion, and great batteries. And these are high performance batteries that can enable your car to go 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. And then where do you go beyond that? That's great, but under 2 seconds, 1.9, 1.8, 1.7 becomes really uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I don't think we need batteries that can perform at a much higher level than we have today. So I don't necessarily think it matters who's going to have the quickest car anymore. Where I think we're going is what's the chemistry that is going to be the most sustainable. What's going to what we're mining for batteries. What materials are the most sustainable to mine, to chemically process, and to use, and what has the longest shelf life, and so what has the least amount of degradation over time. Hey, we proved already that electric vehicles can be super fun, super exciting, basically can do everything better than ICE vehicles can. So we already proved that. But now let's bring them down to a very affordable price point for everyone, because that's another problem we want to solve. in the United States, I think the statistic is that most people, something like 50-60% of people, never buy a new car.
That's correct.
Because they never have the money to. So they're always like buying these clunkers. They're buying ICE vehicles that are a few years old, and then they end up fixing them, maintenance, transmission, the engine goes out, whatever.
Keeps them in the poorhouse.
Keeps
basically.
them in the poorhouse. They can never leave. And that's really sad. And that's a problem that I would love to solve. And I think you can do that with EVs. You could bring them down to price points where anybody can afford them. And if they can't afford an entire vehicle, well, maybe they don't have to, because then they can ride share. And if you can bring down the cost of transportation from where it is today for, say, ride sharing with Uber or Lyft, if you could bring that down 90% for autonomous vehicles, you're talking about $5, $6, $7 per hour of operation.
Mm-hmm.
That's public transportation prices. Why
Right.
would anybody want to either buy a vehicle if you live in an urban area, or take public transportation if we can figure out a way to solve the traffic problem? And so I think EVs get people who could never get into a new
Right.
vehicle into new vehicles, and that has major impact.
And that's what I figure is going to kill public transportation, is the fact that the price for autonomous Lyft, okay, or Uber, whatever. I think that's what's going to basically say, why am I doing something different? This is ridiculous. I don't need to have somebody walk 2 miles to get to a bus and then get on the bus and go another 15 miles and then do the same thing trying to get back home, especially when it's nasty outside. So I believe that pick up at my door and drop me off at my door is a lot better. I think I've said this a couple of times, but I'm a little immature for my age. And so consequently, I can't really gauge or judge somebody else who's in their 70s. It's hard for me to understand because I'm not disabled. I don't think quite that same way. But I think that there's going to be a tremendous number of people who are the same age as I am that are going to be moving into, how do I get around? How do I make a difference? How do I make things happen for me in a good, safe, and comfortable way? And that's where I think that we're heading. I think we're looking at something that's going to be dramatically different in the future. But there's one stumbling block, or one thing that's needs to be addressed, I think, and that is market caps. And I look at some of these new EV companies and whatnot, and their caps are higher than some of the big, huge companies like, for instance, VW. I don't even want to talk about Tesla, who's bigger than everybody else on the planet. But what's going on with things like that? Where do you see that going to in the near future?
Yeah, you hear a lot that these are like crazy runaway valuations for Tesla and the new EV players. Maybe, but maybe not. They have a real opportunity to capture this market that we're talking about, this autonomous ride-sharing market that OEMs just never set themselves up for in the last decade. They just came to the party a little bit late. VW has like over $400 billion in liabilities. So does Ford. Ford has a couple of $100 billion in debt, and so does GM. I think, I don't know, what is it, like 130 billion or so? So massive amounts of debt, higher than the actual market cap of the companies. Right. And so it's like, well, not only do we have to transition from making ICE vehicles to EVs, but we have to worry about all the interest payments and the principal payments on this massive amount of debt. And we have to, they're just starting to get into EVs right now. And they basically I don't think they have figured out how to make money from the get-go. Usually you launch a vehicle program and then you start making money a little bit later. And so for them, it's going to be difficult. They have all of these factories that they have to convert, all of these people that they have to retrain. What do you do with all of your guys that were working on transmissions and engines and, everything in between?
Right. Not to mention the legacy costs. I mean, legacy costs like the the folks who are on disability, the guys that you've got, like you talked about the debt load, but legacy costs are tremendous with the big three. And then what are you going to do with all these buildings? And I mean, some of this stuff, if you shut it down, you just can't walk away from it. These are dirty sites, and somehow you've got to you're going to have to get stuck with the reclaiming of that land, and demolishing of these buildings and burning soil is not cheap. So people keep saying all the time that these caps are like ridiculous. These are just green as grass companies. They never make a penny. But in actuality, it's the debt load that I see and the other obstacles. Like, what do I do with the dealerships? Nobody's going to have dealerships in the future.
What do I do with the dealerships? Why do I need dealerships? If I want to test drive a vehicle, if I'm even going to buy a vehicle, I can just have one as an OEM. I can just send one to a customer autonomously, and they can experience the vehicle, and then it will just come back. Yeah. And they'll never have to leave their house for that experience or go to a dealer to test drive the vehicle, and then for they can complete the transaction in the vehicle that just showed up there, gave them that experience, or they can go online and complete that experience. So I mean, dealerships are redundant, and then OEMs make a lot of money, or most of their money, probably. I think most of their money from the dealership service centers and from selling them parts and from charging, 40-50% markup, or whatever it is based on the part. And so that goes away for OEMs as well. The startups never had that, right? They never relied on the servicing to make money for their companies. Right. They're making money on software. They have their vehicle margins, of course, but then where the money really comes in is, as in Tesla's case, maybe charge for autopilot, $10,000. Right. What does it cost you? Every car is equipped with the same sensors and same sensor suite cameras. If I remember correctly, the take rate for these types of features, specifically for Tesla, is like 20 to 25%.
Right. I think the take rate's going to go up and up and up.
Absolutely.
I see no reduction. I know that we paid the extra $10,000 on the car outside to get the autopilot. If and when the beta full self-driving comes out, I know when I buy, and it's no secret, I'm probably going to want to buy a Cybertruck. And when I buy that, I'm going to get everything I can. Normally, I'm one of those guys who don't buy new. My Jeep outside is not a new Jeep. It's a used one. And the reason for that was because I know that if I get a new one, I'll be too cautious with it. And it's supposed to be a Jeep, and it's supposed to be off-road. This will be if I buy, or when I buy a Cybertruck, it's going to be brand spanking new. And I have never done that before. Never.
Never bought a new truck?
Never. I bought demos, but I've never bought a new vehicle before, ever. Never.
I guess you fit into the statistic.
I do. I'm just barely scraping by. Anyway, so I think that the future's kind of rosy if you're in the EV business.
How much are you saving in maintenance over the entire lifespan of a vehicle? So whether that's a Tesla.
I've taken a guess at this, and my guess is somewhere around 90%.
90%.
90%. I don't have any oil changes. I don't have to worry about spark plugs or fuel injectors. I don't have to worry about anything that has to do with powertrain, really and truly. Electric motors don't go bad. And the gearbox you saw outside, there's only 2 or 3 gears inside, and they're spur gears. They're not or helical gears. They don't wear out. They just keep on going. They're going to go on forever. And I am an engine engineer, and when you look at the number of moving parts inside of an engine, and you look at the number of gears and whatnot that are inside of a transmission, an automatic transmission, or even a bigger manual transmission for an overland truck, you're looking at a huge amount of things that can go wrong, a huge amount of things that have to be manufactured that are going to cost money and could potentially have a problem later on. You don't see that with an electric, and that's why when General Motors asked us if we wanted to work on the EV1, I jumped on that immediately, and we put everybody in the company that was still, was at the company at that time. Everybody worked on the EV1 for General Motors. I thought that was the future then. Unfortunately, the board didn't think that, and so they wound up firing Bob Stempel and Lloyd Royce and a whole bunch of other folks. But I think that the time has come, and the change is happening quickly, and I hope that some of the OEMs can make that transition, but I'm not certain. I'm not certain how. I know if they do survive, they're going to be quite a bit smaller. This is going to be just like when the Japanese brought their cars in. The OEMs didn't move fast enough, and they lost huge amounts of market share. They used to own the whole thing, but now we're looking at the Chinese showing up. I mean, BYD, Geely. Geely has a whole bunch of brands that people don't even know what they are. All these different things are going to be coming in. Each one of them is going to take a little bite, and this is like when you feed goldfish, right? They nibble here and there, and the next thing you know, there's nothing left.
Yeah, I think China, the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Government Party, they incentivized EV startups early on,
right?
Way more and earlier than the United States did, and they ended up with like 400 to 450 EV startups.
Oh no, they have about 600.
They have about 600 now,
right now. Yeah, and I'm thinking. Actually, Chairman Xi gave a speech just before I gave a speech when I was in China in October or November of 2019, and he came on and said basically, I can't remember exactly what he said, but in essence, in American terms, the free ride's over. You got too many car companies. These car companies have to be consolidated. Take your good ideas, turn them into one car company. 3 car companies should be into one, blah, 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 on and on and on. He said he wanted to be down around 150 car companies. 150 car companies. We have 2 in the United States that we would classify as car companies, right? Yeah. These guys are all pushing cars out the door. Now, there's about, I would say, a half a dozen that would be classified as major car companies. Who trained them? Why, the OEMs from the United States and Europe. They trained them all on how to make perfect cars. These cars are not going to have gaps like what you see at Tesla. So Tesla's going to get a run for their money when these things start showing up. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a tough row to hoe for those folks who've sat on their hands and saying, well, let's just make one more quarter profit. It's not going to be easy. I don't know really how they're going to do what they're going to do with all the challenges that are sitting in front of them, because they basically sat on their hands. It's like if the Titanic hits an iceberg, it'd be a good idea if you figured out how to patch the hole. And if you can't do that, what are you going to do to get everybody in lifeboats so that they can escape?
The strategy seems to be, let's just get some EVs on the road and everything will be all right, without taking into account everything else that we spoke about.
And I lived through this once already. In the 80s, I watched them do exactly that. And I watched GM shrink, Ford shrink, Chrysler shrink. And then all of a sudden they get bought out, and things happen so quickly that it made your head spin. And I think it's going to happen again. I think we're looking at a repeat of basically 1980 or the 80s, where one day you're on top of the world, and in the case of General Motors, I think they had like 50% of the market share, or 60, I don't know. Ford had 25 or 30, and basically Chrysler had the rest, and there was nobody else in the marketplace, but the quality of the vehicles was all the same junk. The fuel efficiency was astronomical. Why? Because we had cheap gas. No reason. Pollution? Man, you haven't seen anything pollute like you've seen in those days, where every car exhaust had nothing but billows of smoke coming out. And then you get these Japanese guys that show up. And now what I'm looking at is a whole bunch of newcomers, and I'm looking at a whole bunch of Chinese that are basically going to be eating everybody else's lunch. And we get back to the board members and whatnot and the people who've got the big giant OEMs. I hope that they're thinking about two things: acquisition as opposed to organic growth. I don't think they're going to win if they do that. So acquisitions is one. And a second thing is, the only way that I see them being able to leapfrog is going to VTOL. Now, that's a whole different discussion, and we could probably go on and on. But I believe that we're running out of time. So what I'd like to do is leave everybody hanging a little bit, and thank you very much then for coming to visit us. I'm thrilled that you could make it. Hopefully, I'm going to be coming out to California to see you soon again. And so, with that, any closing comments would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, such a pleasure, and thanks for having me. And what an incredible place you have here. This place is magical. You've worked on some of the most interesting projects, probably out of any engineer on the planet. So I just want to say I'm incredibly happy to be here, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to seeing you in California and seeing how this whole let's see where this conversation stands in the next 4 to 5 years, and see if we got it right.
Great. Well, I'll be here. So anyway, of course, thank you again. It was an honor having you, Zen. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for giving us a suggestion to do a cross-country trip.
Yeah, it was it. Next one is on, we got 2 more coming up. Next one is going to be on a Cybertruck.
Yep. Yeah. And maybe a Rivian. Yeah.
Maybe a Rivian. Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
And it's great that everybody's working on their operating systems right now, but as we saw with the mobile industry, developers cannot support hundreds or even dozens, or maybe even more than like 3 or 4 different operating systems for the same industry.